The September jobs report was released today, and oh boy, was it a disappointment. Job growth last month missed expectations by more than 60%. The White House is scrambling to spin the numbers, but those of us who've been paying attention have to start asking ourselves, what exactly is Joe Biden good at? Friends, it's time for Hold the Line.
Things are coming down pretty rapidly. We just have this jobs report. Steve, what do you see?
194.
Whoa.
I see 194,000. That is real low.
Whoa! It is real low, isn't it? Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. That was CNBC's real-time reaction to September's dismal jobs report. Just to reiterate, in case you haven't seen it, 194,000 jobs added in September. The expectation, the estimate, was that it would be more like 500,000 jobs. So we can all do the math on that one. Not even close. And of course, people who believed in the Build Back Better agenda of Joe Biden are sitting there saying, how do we make this one look like it's not quite the mess that it is? And none other than Joe Biden himself decided to address the American people today. Because when things are really good, right, you have to have the president come out right away to start spinning things. That's usually how it works, isn't it? With the economy, got to have the president come out and explain how the economy's not as bad as the people who have to suffer through it think it is. So here was Biden telling you today, oh no, don't worry, it's all moving in the right direction.
Today, for the first time since March of 2020, the American unemployment rate is below 5%. In just 8 months since I became president, in the midst of a grave public health and economic crisis, the unemployment rate is now down below 5% at 4.8%. Let me just repeat that. Today's report has the unemployment rate down to 4.8%, a significant improvement from when I took office and a sign that our recovery is moving forward, even in the face of a COVID pandemic.
Yeah, see, about the whole unemployment rate thing, it's so interesting. We'll get back to that in just a moment. But here's the reality. We can all understand that this is not, first of all, not what was expected and also not what was promised. Biden said he would crush the virus. He would not crush the economy. It looks like he's got that reversed because he hasn't crushed the virus. And in fact, the economic recovery has been much more anemic than anybody could have anticipated, certainly on the Biden side of things. And just yesterday, for example, he was dismissing the mass firings of the unvaccinated.
More people are getting vaccinated. More lives are being saved. Let's be clear. When you see headlines and reports of mass firings and hundreds of people losing their jobs, look at the bigger story. I've spoken with Scott Kirby, CEO of United Airlines, who's here today. United went from 59% of their employees to 99% of their employees in less than 2 months after implementing the requirement. 99%.
Oh, you mean that when you threaten people's jobs, unless they do something you want them to do, they tend to do it because they want to keep their jobs, they have children to feed, mortgages to pay? Yeah. Is this news to them? No, the whole point here is supposed to be, or we thought that we lived in a country where there was some freedom and some individual choice allowed for personal medical decisions, but not in Biden's America, that's for sure. Meanwhile, back to the jobs numbers, the White House Chief of Staff, Ron Klain, tweeted out in response to the really bad numbers. The unemployment rate is now down to 4.8% in just 8 months. We've created two times more jobs under Biden in his first 9 months than any administration in history. First of all, the government doesn't create jobs, but just putting that aside for a moment here, the labor force participation number is really interesting. You start to look at that. You start to look at who's actually even looking for work at this point. You find that a lot of people aren't even trying to find a job right now. They're scared because of all the COVID panic porn out there. They're worried about what's going to happen with regulation and taxation, so they're hiring less. People are hiring less workers as a result of this. There are plenty of things you could point to that show how things are not working out. But the labor secretary, for example, is trying to tell everybody, Biden's labor secretary, don't worry, the plan is working. This is all according to plan. Watch.
There's a lot going on here, but I will say that, President Biden's economic plan, in my opinion, we look at 194,000 jobs this month. There's 317,000 in the private sector. The plan is working. We've added nearly 5 million jobs since President Biden has taken office. We're still working to get the vaccine mandates are working. The more and more people get vaccinated, the more and more participation we see in the workplace. So we just need to continue to move forward here. We can't stop our work. We have a lot of good, important work to do. We just need to keep moving forward.
This is what the the Biden economic recovery, which of course is now contingent, they say, on the vaccine mandate working, looks like. What does it look like if it wasn't working? You'd have to wonder, based on the numbers that we're seeing, when you have a more than 60% miss in the jobs numbers in September, right, going into a time of the year where there should be a big uptick in economic activity, you would think that people would say, hold on, maybe something's not going according to plan. But one thing you know about the Biden administration is that at every chance, at every opportunity, they double down when other people who were looking at the numbers, looking at the reality, would say, maybe we should take a different approach. No, it's always because Biden didn't do enough of the dumb thing he was doing that wasn't working. They just need more of that thing, more of that approach. Pretty remarkable, and that's why we have many of the results that we do, whether it's on COVID lockdowns, the economy, you name it. Oh, the border, the southern border. We'll get into that in a bit. Labor force participation, I mentioned this. Here's a chart that shows you labor force participation rate is currently at 61.6%. The last time it was this low was in June of 1976. It turns out when you pay people to stay home and not work, you get a lot of people who stay home and do not work. Oh my gosh, isn't that interesting? It's almost like we're running some kind of a test for universal basic income here, using COVID as the excuse for it. You have a lot of people who have been paid to stay home for a long time, many jobs unfilled. You have to wonder what's going to get people to go back into the workforce. Well, you could say higher wages, but what about the small businesses out there that are worried about the increase in their tax rates, the increase in regulation, the increase in the cost of goods? You have inflation chipping away at the margins that businesses already have, raising the price of goods, which means they have to raise the price on customers. If you're rich, if you own a lot of assets, you don't care about this. But you'll notice that they'll always fall back on, it's just because of COVID, you see. It's not Biden's fault. He's doing a great job, yada, yada, yada. It's just because of COVID. But when you look at the numbers, the 10 states with the highest unemployment rate, all of them are blue except for Alaska, Nevada, California, New York, New Mexico, New Jersey, Connecticut. Notice you got California and the Northeast have the highest unemployment rates. Connecticut, Illinois, Hawaii, Pennsylvania's a purple state, but then there's Alaska. Something's going on here, folks, and it may just have something to do with the failed Biden economic policies playing out in a way where we see the numbers, we see the reality, and it is not good. But they're going to keep doing it. They want to spend more money because that's not going to hurt inflation, not going to push inflation up when you spend trillions more, right? Sure. All right, with the Biden administration seemingly unwilling to tackle the onslaught of illegal immigration at the southern border, states are beginning to fill the role the federal government has abandoned. Coming up, we'll talk to Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton about the Lone Star State's efforts to stem the tide. Let's take a quick second, though, to talk about one of the newest sponsors here on Hold the Line, Fume. Fume is the #1 natural way to quit smoking and vaping. Fume is all about creating positive habits. And here's how simple they make it. Fume created a natural inhaler that allows your body to receive the amazing benefit from some of the world's best super plants. It's a Canadian-made, handcrafted wooden inhaler with no electronics. And it makes quitting smoking easier. There's no smoke, no vape, no nicotine, no harmful chemicals, all right? This company is great. Fume also has other areas of support beyond just helping you quit smoking. Head to breathefume, spelled FUM.com/buck. That's breathefume.com/buck, and take their quiz to find out which super plants are best for you. It's quick, it's easy, it'll point you in the right direction. Again, breathefume.com/buck. We'll be right back with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. The southern border is preparing for a massive migrant surge. A new report shows the Department of Homeland Security was made aware in July that thousands of Haitian migrants are heading to the U.S. No action has been taken because, yet again, the Biden administration is asleep at the wheel. What will these border states do? Let's ask Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Mr. Attorney General, thanks for being with us.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So first of all, I think that it's a surprise for people to find out, or at least for a lot of folks to find out, that Homeland Security knew the Haitian migrant surge was coming. Why wasn't there more done in terms of preparation?
Well, I think we have to think about this in a different way. They're not trying to stop illegal immigration. They're inviting it. So we all think that if they knew about it, they do something about it. They knew about it and they didn't do anything about it because they apparently want as much illegal immigration as they can get during the Joe Biden administration. They've made that very clear from day one, and their policies match what's actually happening, which is we have the largest influx of immigration we've ever had. And so it's hard to argue that this is not exactly what they want.
So what can the state of Texas do? People have been asking now, where can border states try to fill in the gaps? Obviously, there are limitations. It's not the federal government. We're talking about an international border, but Texas does border Mexico, as does the United States, of course. So what happens? What can you do?
So it's a pretty hard question. I don't think we've ever been in a position where the federal government appears to be operating in complete violation of the federal law against its own people. And so we're suing them. We've been successful in court, but then we get these orders like the Stay in Mexico program. They're supposed to re-implement that after we went all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And yet it doesn't seem like they follow federal law, which comes from Congress, or they follow even court orders. And so we're in a very interesting time. And so now you've got this question, what can states do? And we have a Supreme Court precedent that says that supposedly we can't do much if the federal government has laws about it. If they don't enforce them, we're supposed to sit on the sidelines, which is very frustrating and also detrimental to our state.
Top U.S. officials headed to Mexico City today to talk high-level security with the Mexican government. Turns out the border czar, Kamala Harris, didn't go, which is pretty fascinating considering she's supposed to be overseeing the government's response to this. Here is the State Department Press Secretary Ned Price on that visit. Wanted to have you respond to it.
We believe we are due for an updated look at our bilateral security cooperation, we need an approach that addresses the concerns and the priorities of both governments. And this will really be one of the core elements of the discussions tomorrow.
Is that going to do anything?
I didn't even know what he said. It made no sense. It didn't seem very vague, and I don't expect a change. This immigration issue has been with us since day one of the Biden administration, and they've done nothing to improve it. They've only done things to make it worse, including getting rid of people at the head that could have helped. And apparently, this is what they want.
It's also remarkable. We have some footage of a Mexican cartel gunmen were apparently waving. They had AK-47s and were taunting National Guard soldiers at the border. I mean, you're the Attorney General of the state of Texas. What kind of actual security challenge does it pose when you have a border that is this porous for your state and for the whole country?
No, it's pretty bad. I don't think we've ever seen a president just let the border go like this. And so not only let the border go, but he's allowing these cartels tremendous access to our country. Not just to the border states. I mean, they clearly have access to the border states to import fentanyl from China, to import as many people as they can get to the border, to allow all kinds of other trafficking to go on. But the reality is the cartels are going to gain access to the entire country through this process. And the Biden administration is looking the other way and maybe even helping them do it.
I wanted to switch gears with you, Mr. Attorney General, for a second here onto the DOJ, where there's another Attorney General, who have put out a memo this week, as we know, we've talked about it here on the show, targeting, or I would say threatening, parents who have been speaking out at some of these school board meetings. You tweeted out in Texas, this will not be happening. We'll defend parents. We'll stand up for parents' rights to speak out about what they think is the truth about critical race theory and other issues going on at their schools. I mean, you're a law enforcement professional. What was your reaction to seeing the chief law enforcement officer of the federal government come out and put some memo out there about finding out ways to take action against angry parents?
You know, it's one of the scariest things I've ever seen in my country. I've obviously heard about things happening like this in Germany in the 30s and other totalitarian governments, maybe Russia or China. But to hear that happen from our attorney general in this country, it was chilling. And I think that's the idea here: chill free speech, scare these parents. I hope that parents will continue to speak out. They have a right to be angry about some of this stuff. Obviously, you don't want to threaten people, but that's not what's going on here for the most part. What is going on here is parents are speaking out about their own children, about the situation that their local school districts are putting them in, and they have every right to do it, and they ought to continue to do it and not let a bully administration threaten them out of defending their own children.
What is the status of critical race theory teaching in the state of Texas right now? Can you just tell us, there's been a lot of back and forth with the school board meetings in Virginia, notably Loudoun County, but also Fairfax, other counties that are very close to Washington, D.C. What's going on in Texas when it comes to CRT?
Yeah, so the last legislative session, which ended in May, they passed a bill and they basically banned it in our state. Whether these school districts are following that, they haven't followed other things. We're going to have to pay attention and address it if they're not listening to what state law governs, which is you can't teach critical race theory in our schools.
Here is, by the way, a mom who went viral at a summit talking about her feelings on the public school system given the CRT reality. Play it, folks.
These people, they are serious. They want to silence us and shut us down. I really think at this point, the only thing to do is have a mass exodus from the public school system. That's it.
She's worried about being silenced, obviously telling parents they need to find alternative educational opportunities for their own children. But just on that point of silencing, we've been talking about the DOJ. At the state level, I mean, you could put out a statement that says that you stand in solidarity in the state of Texas with the First Amendment. Is there anything else you can do?
So we're going to be looking at that. Obviously, this was a surprise to us. I've never seen anything like this. No state attorney general that I know of has ever had to deal with this type of open, not veil, open threat against regular citizens of our country for having a different view on critical race theory. And look, I understand why the AG might support it. He's got some family members that are involved with this, and he may personally believe in it. But even if we have disagreements, we don't threaten people with FBI investigations and DOJ prosecutions just because these parents disagree with these theories.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Sir, thank you for being with us. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks a lot, Buck.
New York City is still struggling to regain its footing since COVID-19 and incompetent governance brought the Big Apple to its knees. So is the city that never sleeps going to wake up anytime soon? New York City resident and former co-host of The View, JEDEDIAH joins me after the break to give her perspective. Right now, I want to talk to you about my friends at My Digital Money. Crypto is hot right now. Seems like everybody wants to get on the action. But whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any of the other dozens of digital tokens out there, it's not easy to get started. That's where My Digital Money comes in. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with incredible customer service. It's one of the few U.S.-based cryptocurrency companies that'll answer your phone call and help you get started. Because your comfort and security is their top priority, they offer an unparalleled military-grade security for your coins, trigger orders to help you secure opportunities for gains or limit losses without having to watch your account 24/7, a play money account so you can test the market without risking your money. And listen, the crypto market is heating up again, and this might be the best time to get into this exciting technology-based investment. When it comes to your money, you deserve a team of dedicated professionals who have your back, speak to you honestly, and treat you like a human, not a number. Check them out at mydigitalmoney.com. That's mydigitalmoney.com. We'll be right back with JEDEDIAH. New York City has some of the most severe public health measures in the nation under Fauciism, requiring proof of vaccination before residents can do pretty much anything. The measures have taken a toll on the Big Apple, leaving many longtime residents wondering when, if ever, the city that never sleeps is going to wake up. One of those residents is TV host, author, and my good friend, JEDEDIAH. She joins me now. JEDEDIAH, good to see you.
Good to see you, Buck, as always.
Yeah, just talking about how we've been buddies now for 10 years, seen a lot change in the world of conservative media and just the world in general. Never thought I'd be sitting here at the end of our first decade of friendship and asking you about how you think New York exits the pandemic, but of course, here we are. I do feel like there's a mass psychosis that we actually have to overcome now, and our public policy is starting to represent what feels like a widespread anxiety disorder instead of the science. I mean, what do you see going on in New York?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some politicians, some media figures, some people who have a vested interest politically, some financially in maintaining this panic in society, regardless of vaccination rates, regardless of herd immunity, regardless of natural immunity out there. It just doesn't seem to matter. And it's scary. You know, you and I both love New York City. We've spent a good portion of our lives there. I spent most of my adult life in the city, and so many aspects of the city are deteriorating. It's not just the mandates, which really, when you walk around Manhattan now, it reads like the worst chapter of a dystopian novel that you wished had never come to life, and now here it is. But it's also the crime. I mean, it's just not safe anymore. And I keep, tweeting about this and pointing out specific neighborhoods, because these are neighborhoods that, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I would walk around by myself at night, wander the city, and now I would never do that. It feels tangibly unsafe to me. And I think that has a lot to do with what happened this past year with the lockdown. So many businesses fled. You saw the increases in crime, and you also see that the police force in the city just doesn't feel supported. And when you have a police force that doesn't feel that they're supported when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to, the mayor of that city, who now, thinks he's going to run for governor, God help everyone, it just doesn't work. And you're seeing all of those pieces of the puzzle, which is why a lot of people have fled to states like Florida, to states like Texas, to states like Tennessee. I myself am leaving because, I have a kid now, and I look at what's happened to the city, and I just can't justify raising a child in a place that is so stifling and so unsafe in so many ways.
What do you think it would take for in the case of New York and people watching this, a lot of them live in cities all across the country, and some of them, of course, don't live in cities at all. But what would it take, you think, for the Democrats who have gone along with so much of this to finally feel like enough is enough? I think that's been the aspect of this in New York specifically, as somebody who's living here alongside, everyone else who's been through the craziness that you and I have seen. I think it's been surprising me, Jedediah, how much the Democrats, because it really is now a partisan issue, the Democrats are willing to put up with when it comes to constantly changing mask and vaccine and lockdown and social distancing measures and restrictions and capacity limits and all this stuff, and now maybe boosters in the future. Do you think that some of them are just happy to go on like this forever? Because I've started to worry.
I think they need someone to blame. I think when you look at the president's press conference and he's now blaming the unvaccinated, he can't blame himself. So some of these crippling policies in these cities have really sunk the cities. And it's not just New York. We can talk about New York City because, you and I have a history there in terms of, we spent a large part of our lives there. But you look at California, it's really no different. I mean, what's going on there? And they need someone to blame. And there's this refusal, it seems, on their part to say I was wrong, particularly when it comes to COVID-19. I mean, it's insane, really, what's going on, that you have these massive mandates being instituted for a vaccine that does not prevent someone from getting COVID-19 and does not prevent someone from spreading COVID-19. You also don't have natural immunity accounted for, which so many people in places like New York got COVID, they recovered, and the silver lining for them was that they have this natural immunity. They now can't enter a restaurant, a gym, a bar. It makes absolutely no sense. You could have someone with COVID-19, with symptoms, who was vaccinated sitting in a restaurant, but you can't have someone who's naturally immune who doesn't have symptoms at that time. This is not science. This is absolute madness. And I think these politicians have taken note, though. They have said to themselves, what can we get away with? And they have gotten away with so much when it comes to the lockdowns, when it comes to what they've done to business, when it comes to these mandates. And they're, I think, in a phase now where they're saying, can we go even further? I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the point's going to be when it backtracks. I really don't. It may take a new administration when it comes to the president. It may take, I don't know. I mean, a Republican getting elected in New York is just not realistic, honestly, with where everyone is. But it also takes people, right? I mean, Buck, we've been looking at protests erupting. Yes, across the country, across the globe. You see some in New York City where people are saying, I am not taking part in these mandates. I would rather, quit my job than be told that I have to put something into my body. But there's also a lot of people who comply with this stuff, who lay down and say, you know what? I need to have a social life. I need to be able to go to the gym and exercise. I understand those points of view to an extent because these same people were locked down for an entire year, and that can be very detrimental to someone's mental health. But it really takes people to say, I am not going to tolerate that, whether that be in a workplace, whether that be in society, wherever, before politicians wake up and say, well, they're not going to comply. We can't do this. We have to remedy what we're doing. As of right now, they're getting away with it.
Jedediah, you've got a new book coming out next month called Dear Hartley, Thoughts on Character, Kindness, and Building a Brighter World. I feel like this might take us into a happier place, like your adorable child there. I mean, what can we expect in the book? What are you telling everybody?
Yeah, I wrote this past year, and with everything going on in the world, it's so crazy. I have this little boy that I look at and I say, I want him to be free. I want him to have choices that he can make for himself. And I decided that I wanted him to have an anchor. And I wrote this series of letters to him to just say, you know what, when it comes to patriotism, character, friendship, all of these issues you're going to encounter in life, let this be a little bit of a guide for you, because I don't know what the world's going to look like in 20 years for him. And I'm frankly a little bit frightened by what I'm seeing. And of course, there's room to reverse course, and there's states you can move to in this great country of ours that haven't lost their minds. But I was living this in New York City, and I felt this was a good way to not only speak to him, but to speak to the country at large. It is very polarized. Many of us don't know how to have a conversation with each other anymore. So that is a key theme of it. But it's also just what values built this country, what values build great people and great nations, and how do we get our kids to remember that? So that's just close to heart, and he's my whole world. So anything I can do to make his world brighter is my number one.
Well, best of luck with the book, Dear Hartley, Thoughts on Character, Kindness, and Building a Brighter World. Go check it out, folks, wherever you get your books. Jedediah Bila, my friend, good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
See you again soon, Buck.
Take care. Colleges and universities around the country are beginning to impose draconian COVID mandates, banning unvaccinated students from in-person learning in campus facilities. Coming up, University of Chicago student Evita Duffy joins us to discuss COVID authoritarianism in higher education. But I want to tell you about a potential opportunity. You ever wanted to invest in real estate but you didn't have the time to do it on your own? You didn't want to make rookie mistakes. I felt exactly that way until about a year ago. I always loved the idea of real estate investment, but I didn't know how to get involved in something without making rookie mistakes like that. You know what I mean? That's when I met my friends at Done For You Real Estate. They took all the guesswork out of it for me. They found me an awesome property. They rented it out for me right away. They managed the tenant for me. And now I get a check every month like clockwork. Don't wait another second to see if my buddies at Done For You Real Estate can do for you what they did for me. Visit doneforyoubuck.com to see how it works. Again, every step of the process, picking the city, the house, getting the loan set up, getting a tenant in place, and a management company to handle the whole thing for you. Just go to doneforyoubuck.com to see what my friends can do for you. That's doneforyoubuck.com to begin your real estate investment journey. And we'll be right back. The list of U.S. colleges mandating the COVID-19 vaccine continues to grow, and for the second year in a row, the University of Chicago goes pretty much full totalitarian on their student body. Evita Duffy is a student at the Chicago Institute, and she wrote a scathing op-ed for the Federalist in which she wrote the following. In order to attend in-person classes, all students must submit to the University of Chicago's point of view and sign their names to it. Failure to sign university attestation meant your student ID was deactivated and you were banned from all university facilities, barring you from attending class. The statements we are forced to agree with are ludicrous, but more importantly, students should never be forced to say they adhere to any belief or ideology just to obtain an education. Break down more of the university's egregious COVID compliance demands. Evita Duffy's joining us now. Evita, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So we've heard about COVID mandates, lockdowns, vaccination passports, COVID loyalty oaths. I mean, what are we talking about here? What are you having to sign?
So it's a online document that makes you, say, I agree that COVID-19 is a serious public health threat and that failure to adhere to the university's COVID rules, like putting a cloth over my mouth, will put myself and others in serious danger. And I simply don't believe either of those things. And I'm a little confused why, in order to attend class, this is a required document to sign. You'll get your ID shut off if you don't sign it. So why, in order to attend class, I have to say I believe those things? It's absolutely ridiculous.
Now walk us through, if you will, what are the restrictions at at the University of Chicago right now? I mean, what are the things that people have to, is there an indoor and outdoor mask mandate? Is there vaccination? Are there required tests? I mean, take us through this. You got people at home who may be college age themselves, or a lot of folks who have kids who are college age who are watching. What are students being put through? What are these COVID restrictions they want you to adhere to?
So you have to wear a mask indoors all the time. You need to be socially distanced indoors. If you are unvaccinated, you have to, first of all, vaccines are required, but if you are able to obtain a religious or medical exemption, which are sometimes hard to come by, then you have to have weekly tests. If you are exposed to someone, you have to comply with their contact tracing program. You have to adhere to every single Illinois and City of Chicago public health mandate. There are a lot of things that this document is making you say you will agree to do, this is not abnormal in just the University of Chicago. This is all across America.
It's unbelievable. I mean, there are some schools, as I understand it, that are requiring not only vaccination to be able to even be on campus, but also weekly testing, which seems very expensive. Has there been, as well as not like that's going to stop anything, has there been pushback from the student body at your school? Are people saying enough is enough, or is everyone pretty much just going along with this and complying, obviously other than you, who's writing about it in the Federalist?
You know, there's a group of friends of mine on campus who are, not even conservative, just people who don't think that the university should be treating the students like they're little children. Part, I would say, besides those students, it's pretty much compliant. People are happy to sign their name to this because they believe it, and it doesn't matter. But what's so odd about this statement is that this is not just, you have to follow rules. This is, you have to agree with us. And what's shocking is, I believe that communism and socialism has killed, and I know communism and socialism has killed far more people than COVID-19. So should we sign a document saying that we will, not believe in either of those ideologies? I mean, this is ludicrous that you have to believe something just to attend class.
And I'm just wondering, what are you planning to do here? I mean, are you willing? There are people who have refused to get the shot, for example, including healthcare workers, frontline healthcare workers. They've lost their jobs. Are you going to continue to double down on this, Evita, or are you willing to sign the COVID policy pledge in order to stay on campus? Have you made a decision yet?
I've reached out to so the deadline has already passed. So if you didn't sign it, your ID was turned off. I've reached out to the university on my own to say that I don't agree with certain parts of it, and that I'm signing it because under duress I have to, but not necessarily because I agree with all the contents of the document. But I'm not. I mean, that's me. Everybody's doing their own thing. I would say probably most people just signed it. It's too much of a hassle to go against the university. You might as well just get to class and be done. So it's unfortunate that they're making us do this, but what can we do?
And just, I'm wondering, you're at an age where you obviously have, your friends are college age and grad school age. Are they scared of COVID themselves? One thing that has been fascinating to me is how many parents I've actually now come across, or at least heard speaking, seen sound bites of, who seem terrified that their 5-year-old could actually die from COVID, even though the numbers clearly show that is an absolutely irrational fear. Are most of your peers in any meaningful way afraid of COVID and therefore more compliant, or do they just comply because of the political and social signaling? Like, what's it like for the people who are, I mean, you're in your early 20s, right? The chance of anybody around that age dying from COVID is like the chance of getting struck by lightning. How can they walk around with masks on and not feel like this is an absurdity? I'm honestly wondering.
You're absolutely right. What I call it is it's COVID theater. I mean, that's what it is, because a lot of these students, but
did they know that though, Evita? I mean, I know you know that, but like, what does your peer group think?
They actually, I don't believe any of them really believe that any of this is putting them at risk, because, I'll see them in class socially distanced with their masks on, and then on Friday night they're on a frat party, really close to each other with no masks on and hanging out. So it's really performative. I don't believe, just based on the way that my peers act, that they think they're at any risk, but they're just going along with it and shaming anybody else who doesn't get vaccinated or doesn't wear a mask while they're walking down the hallway to their next class. So it's obviously performative because they don't act like it's serious.
Evita, stay strong. Thanks for being with us. Good to see you.
Much.
Mayor Muriel Bowser has extended the COVID public emergency in D.C. until 2022. Shocking, right? Yeah, we'll get into the hypocritical government overreach coming up in Quick Hits. Got to tell you again about my friends at My Digital Money. Seems like everybody wants to invest in crypto these days. Bitcoin, Ethereum, so many digital tokens out there to look at, to invest in. They could have huge gains down the line, right? But where do you start? That's where My Digital Money comes in. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with incredible customer service. It's one of the few US-based cryptocurrency companies that'll answer your phone call and help you get started. Because your comfort and security is their top priority, they offer an unparalleled military-grade security for your coins, trigger orders to help you secure opportunities or limit losses without watching your account 24/7. I mean, this is a great time to get into this, right? You could start today. You deserve a team of dedicated professionals, however, who have your back and speak to you honestly. So that's My Digital Money. Go to mydigitalmoney.com. Again, that's mydigitalmoney.com, and we will be right back with Quick Hits. One therapist uses her expertise to try and normalize masks, while an LA sheriff says he won't enforce the tyrannical vaccine mandates. Let's get into it in Quick Hits. But first, actually, I got to start with this. I used to live in Washington, D.C. I've lived there twice, actually. Both times I left. In part because there are just too many libs, too many liberals running around, too many leftists. The city is second, I believe, for a major city in the U.S. in terms of Democrat registration, only to San Francisco. So our nation's capital, just remember this, is the most liberal city in America after San Francisco, which is so liberal that it's not even left. It's like fallen off the scale somewhere else. But that's what I guess the situation is. We have to deal with it. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, of course, who presides over the leftist dystopia of D.C., has extended the pandemic emergency all the way to 2022. Official statement today: I extend the public emergency until January 7, 2022. The district can continue responding expeditiously and safely to COVID-19 and its ongoing impacts. D.C., I believe, still has a mask mandate in place indoors, which is crazy because we were told that if you're vaccinated, you didn't have to do that. But then they said, oh no, you might have to do it because you could still give people the disease even if you are vaccinated. But the vaccine works super well. And if you challenge whether the vaccine works super well, you're a bad person. Yeah, you're starting to see how this all goes, right? They just keep changing and act like every time they change, we're not supposed to notice. And they just do whatever nonsense they want to do. And the rest of us are supposed to go along with it. But should we? Okay, and this one really upsets me. New York City has eliminated gifted and talented classes. This is a tweet from the New York Times education reporter Eliza Shapiro. New York City to eliminate gifted and talented classes over the next 5 years. Major change and likely Bill de Blasio's last big decision as mayor. Kids now enrolled in gifted programs will stay in them, but there'll be no more separate gifted classes for incoming kids. Just so everyone understands the way this is written about and talked about by the Democrat elites in a place like New York City, the New York Times describes the gifted and talented program as, quote, segregation. That's right, racial segregation. That is the word that they use for the gifted and talented program in the supposedly premier newspaper in New York, one of the biggest newspapers in the country. Well, what actually happens in the gifted and talented program? You have students who at about age 4 or 5 take a cognitive test to see what their scholastic ability may be like. And if they get a certain score on the test, they go into a gifted and talented track in the public school system. Now, the problem with this, and this from the leftist perspective, is that while about 25% of public school students in New York are white or Asian, about 75% of students in the gifted and talented program in the New York City school system are white or Asian. So you have a disproportionate representation of white and Asian students, and Latino and Black students are represented in much lower proportion in the gifted and talented program. So what have they done? Instead of saying, how do we help more Black and Latino students get into the program or encourage them or try to create more tracks where it's possible for them to get into perhaps at a later period, they've decided to just put everybody in the same class and just end the program. Because it's unfair. It's unfair that some students who can go faster, and that's what ends up happening, are able to do that. So they want to make everybody in the same classroom so the teacher is going to teach to the slower students in terms of their scholastic ability to move through subject matter. And that's the way the system is going to work now. And whoever that affects, right? It'll affect the Black and Latino students who would have been in the gifted and talented program, because there were certainly plenty of them. But they will say, sorry, now everybody has to be moving at the pace of the students who are not as capable academically at a young age. That's where we are. That's the way that they deal with it. LA Sheriff Villanueva says he will not enforce the COVID vaccine mandate. Here you go.
Are you forcing your officers to set the vaccine, to get the vaccine? As I said, no, I'm not forcing anyone. The issue has become so politicized. There are entire groups of employees that are willing to be fired and laid off rather than get vaccinated. So I don't want to be in a position to lose 5-10% of my workforce overnight on a vaccine mandate, while at the same time our bare bones with the funding effort. So this is like the worst of two worlds right here. So we have to pick and choose.
We have to pick and choose, and he is not going to be enforcing that vaccine mandate. One more for you before we send you off for the weekend.
We are almost 2 years into the worst public health catastrophe in modern history. And what's happened for many of us is that we've learned to associate maskless faces with the threat of spreading COVID-19. For many of us, when we see a face without a mask on, the brain has learned to register that visual stimuli as a threat. The amygdala, which is the brain's smoke detector, then sends out a stress response signal that triggers the sympathetic nervous system into the fight, flight, or freeze response. I'm just hopping on here to normalize that because COVID-19 is still a threat, and the reaction that we have to seeing maskless faces isn't just emotional or intellectual, it's also physiological.
I don't even have time to deal with the craziness right now. Masks don't work. Anyway, have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for being here. That's it for Hold the Line. The No Spin News of Bill O'Reilly is up next. Shields high.